played in the NFL for 5 seasons, had been a part of that Buccaneers defense. You guys all remember? Great names. He's got a story to tell, but he's got a show of his own, Big Game James, as they always call him. James Cannida joining me here on the show via the Global Satellite Network, present. All right, well, James, I got to say it is an absolute pleasure to having you up onto the show. You've been covering a lot with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and for a former Buccaneer like yourself, you know a lot about this organization, and you know what it's all about. So I want to start there with Tampa. So this year was really interesting. We're going from post Tom Brady, right? And we thought that this NFC South was wide open. And I mean, the Saints, they got Derek Carr. The Panthers, they got hopefully a promising rookie quarterback in Bryce Young. And then you've got the Atlanta Falcons who have some defensive pieces. There were some question marks in the building with Tampa Bay. But in comes Baker Mayfield. He loves being the underdog. And a lot of people were like, I don't know if this is going to really work. But he wins the division. He won a playoff game. And I think, honestly, this narrative really just kind of changed everything. And I love this version of Baker Mayfield. How would you sum up Tampa Bay's season in a nutshell of going from Tom Brady to now going into, I would say, an underdog mentality in Tampa Bay this year?
Man, it was an unknown. And I know I was one that had a lot to say about Baker Mayfield. I did think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should have given Baker Mayfield a chance, but it was when Tom Brady did the pump fake retirement. You know, Tom Brady came out and said that he was going to retire. Then later on, he came back, and it was like, oh, damn. So Baker Mayfield was always the guy that I had in the back of my mind, right? But at the same time, I wanted to see what Kyle Trask was going to do. You know, here it is. We take a guy, early second-round pick, highly regarded, highly touted, coming out of the University of Florida. Let's see what he can do. So I was a little skeptical. Baker won the job. Fair enough. Let's see what Baker can do. And I'm always the first one. I am glad that Baker Mayfield got the shot he got, and he was able to reinvent himself. Baker Mayfield, I think, was an easy guy to hate early on in his career. Because for some reason, it was easy for Baker to be the bad guy, right? Mm-hmm. So here it is. He's the ultimate team guy. You know, some of the guys that I talked to that still live around, you know, they live in Tampa and they're still around the organization. Was like, man, it's unreal. You see how he interacts with the team, what he's like in the community. He's a great guy to have around. You know, this could be our guy for a while. And to see how he played, and even that Lions game, protection schemes is really what cost, you know, some of those sacks. And we're right there in that game all the way up until the, you know, the pick in the end. So I'm satisfied, and I believe that we have a guy that we can try to find a way to extend, give a contract to, and those other pieces that we need as far as the secondary, offensive line, linebacker help, because we don't know what's going to happen with Devin White, which would, you know what I mean? So I believe that we have a quarterback that can be serviceable for the next 3 years, and we can build around it. We just got to see what the Buccaneers organization is going to do.
So it is an interesting offseason because, of course, I think, you know, Baker's story, you know, going from, you know, a highly pressured organization like the Cleveland Browns to then, you know, he kind of had a reality check in Carolina, but then comes in and Sean McVay in LA basically revamped him and really reshaped him to be the quarterback that he is now. So I think there's a lot of positivity that I think kind of comes in for Tampa Bay. But there is a lot of questions of it because not only just with what's going to happen with Devin White, but here's the other thing. The heart and soul of Tampa Bay's offense, Mike Evans. I love him. And I honestly think, this year, because of the way the story narrative shaped, that's kind of hard to leave, you know, in my opinion. So how would you kind of see this play out with Mike Evans? Is he a guy that he wants to retire a Buccaneer, or does he kind of see himself elsewhere? What's your thoughts?
I think Mike wants to be a Buccaneer for life. That's kind of the impression I've gotten from being around. I've had a chance to go down to a couple of different Ring of Honor ceremonies and interact with a couple of guys during those times. And Mike Evans is all in. The hard thing is the cap situation that we were in once Brady left and so much of the dead money we had to eat, it's going to be a little bit better this offseason, but some serious pieces are going to have to be moved around. The fan in me definitely wants to see Mike Evans stay for sure. I want him to finish his career with the Buccaneers. The business side and me being in the locker room, watching business decisions happen. You hear whispers in the back, then all of a sudden you see roster changes. You understand what may or may not be for a receiver of his age this late. But if Baker Mayfield is going to be the quarterback we stick with, you got to give him his number one in Mike Evans. You got to figure out a way to make it work. Whether that means other pieces leave, other pieces go, what it's going to be, it's hard. I'm glad I'm not the guy that's got to get in there and crunch those numbers during this time of year, because trying to make it work and figuring it out. And I believe that this is just me, because Mike has already gotten the one extension and gotten through it. I believe Mike may give you the hometown discount if he thinks that you can build around the nucleus of people that they have and continue to be a contender. And the one thing that's going to help us is being in the NFC South. I don't like being in what people call the worst division of football, but Jake, it's been bad for the last 2 years.
Yes.
Some will say competitive, but it's been bad. Let's call it what it is. The NFC South is just, oh Lord, last man. Like you throw a coin up in the air, and if it lands on one team, like, oh my God, they won the division. But going into the season, no one gave Tampa Bay Buccaneers really a chance. So to finish where they did at 9-8, make the playoffs, beat Philadelphia the way they did. I mean, we know Philly turned into a dumpster fire. It's not like it was a great Philadelphia team. Like, they weren't the Philadelphia team we played earlier in the year was better, of course. But to win that game, compete against the Lions the way we did, show that we can get things going, it gives everyone in Tampa hope and promise, just depending on what we can do free agency here. Because, Antoine Winfield Jr., another one that balled out. Something we got to get. I mean, there's a lot of pieces that got to get figured out in Tampa.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I will say that I will contest to this. I mean, early on in the season, I had a feeling, and I know that the cap was so heavy for New Orleans, but I honestly felt that the narrative, because Derek Carr moving from the Raiders to going to the Saints, I'm like, oh, he's finally going to have a top 15 defense for once.
Right.
Because it was like the Raiders, since he's been there, had been a low bottom tier defense.
Right.
He hadn't really gotten a whole lot from his supporting cast. But then he comes in, and I'm almost like, and then the halfway through the season, if not 3 quarters, I was like, wait a minute, this was not the season I anticipated. But then I look at Baker, and I'm kind of like, oh God, this is an underdog story we're not even talking about here.
Right.
And that's what I'm like, honestly, if I had to think of comeback player of the year, I mean, I understand with, honestly, Damar Hamlin. I mean, it was tragic, but it was great to see him on the field. But if you had to be like reasonable, I feel like Baker Mayfield honestly should get comeback player of the year, because the underdog story is just one that is so undervalued. I think the other thing is, isn't it kind of strange and yet kind of funny that Mike Evans, who came from Texas A&M, who had Johnny Manziel as his quarterback at the same height, then goes and sees Baker Mayfield and almost works the same? I mean, that's kind of reasonable to kind of nail that for Baker, right?
That's a great comparison, a great way to put that. That's the thing I love about football. There's so many different stories that can take place in the game of football, the way it presents itself. And I think the biggest downfall, like I said, everyone wrote Baker off when he got traded to he left, went to Carolina, and then he got cut. And early on, they're like, dude, he can't even make it in Carolina. What is wrong with this guy? Baker's done. He's washed up. But yet to see how everything went on this year after Matt Rule left, the fire Frank Reich the way they did, we realized that Carolina just wasn't the place to help develop anybody. And the good thing about Tampa, Dave Canales came in his first time as a play caller. He and Baker had a chance to figure each other out, learn together, saw what worked and what didn't work. And I believe Jason Light and the Buccaneers organization really gave Baker a clean slate and a chance to just play ball, be yourself. Let's see what happens. And by far, because even Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans are like, what the hell? We playing Baker Mayfield? Oh, hell, our season's over. So if that's the case, I think Baker Mayfield should be, the comeback player of the year, slammed up, hands down. Is it going to be that easy and that convincing? I don't know. And that's not just me as a Buccaneers fan, but you take most people that cover this game or even fans of this game, and everyone at the beginning of the year, when they say, man, Tampa Bay not going to win anything, Baker Mayfield's their quarterback too. Man, Tampa Bay won a division and won a playoff game, and Baker Mayfield was a quarterback. It's the same sentence, but it's a whole different narrative to it and a different outcome. And I believe that you have to tip your hat to Baker Mayfield, and I think he's very deserving of that award.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Most deserving. And at the same time, I mean, this has got to be a conversation worth talking about. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
that's where I'm like, hopefully, and like I said, I'm rooting for Baker Mayfield all the way. I thought after the season he had, he is very deserving of a contract extension because at
Right.
least they can say we have a quarterback post Brady because that is the toughest shoes to fill. But it's like Baker's dangerous. He doesn't shy away from the competition, and so that's why I think he's very most deserving. I think of being a comeback player, but at the same time, not that he'll get his extension. I think it's reasonable because so I want your opinion on this. And for somebody experienced on the defense, right? I look at the Buccaneers offseason. It's an interesting one. I honestly do think you should run this back with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans on the offense. But the defense, there's some question marks from there. I mean, Shaq Barrett to Devin White and to, Lamont, for some defensive pieces. And I love Antoine Winfield Jr. I think the kid, I watched his dad play in Minnesota. That kid is just unbelievable. He brings a pedigree. How would you evaluate, the defense moving into the off season? And what are some of your thoughts of basically what are their wants and their needs that they know they want to fill for them to potentially run this thing back and be honestly an NFC conference disruptor next year?
Well, yeah, Kalijah Cansey was a great pickup and a great addition to the interior defensive line, so that helps. Yaya Diaby was a great pick as a third-round draft pick out of Louisville. Got a lot of playing time, ended up replacing Joe Tryon-Shank as a defensive end this year. And then you got to look other places. Savasier Dennis, third-round pick out of Pitt, filled in. And then why am I drawing a blank now? I was just talking about this guy a few minutes ago with one of my buddies who stepped in for Devin White, that KJ Britt is amazing in the tackle box. Stepped up, made a lot of plays. So I think you have someone there. Levante David is old, great leader. But I believe the middle part of that defense, the linebacker core, is going to have to be figured out. Even if Britt moves into being a starter, who's going to be a backup. I believe Devin White is gone. I think in so many situations in that blitz defense of Todd Bowles, he was great, but something's not right there. I don't know exactly what it is. Because I talked to a couple different people that's still in Tampa, and it's like, man, there's some stuff that might hit the fan. Don't know yet. I don't want to speak on it until I know what's up. So I was like, when you know what's going on, I said, not even for me to break news, report anything. I just want to know what's going on. And then the secondary, Jamel Dean, Carlton David III, is just getting beat at different times, not in place. So I think at the cornerback spot, we've got to get short up. Antoine Winfield will get brought back, even if they don't get him extended. They'll put a franchise tag on him, I believe. So he'll be there to help at the safety position. But from the defensive side of the ball, Vita Vea is still solid. They run a 3-4, but they still shift into a 4-3 sometimes where they do their packages. So I believe that Vita and Cansey inside are going to be good. Diaby's going to be fine. Shaq Barrett's getting old, so I think defensive end, edge guy, depending on if it's free agency or draft, will be a great positional need. Because I was a big Joe Tryon-Shank fan, and he just hasn't grown into what I think the organization thought he was going to be. He'll be a good situational role player, but when you get a guy in the first round, you need him to be a more effective pass rusher, and he just hasn't had the success they thought he was going to have this year. So those are the pieces on the defensive side of the ball that I really want to see addressed. Edge rusher, again, so that linebacker help and secondary help. I mean, we got to get better at the corners and then Neal back in the secondary, the safety spot coming over from Seattle. I was like, man, this is a great pickup. It's going to be good. And it just seemed like so many times always in the right position, but never could make a tackle. I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, make the damn tackle. Wrap up, bring it. So, I mean, I just think those are the positions of key need that they're really going to have to hone in on the defensive side of the ball. And I did. And every time I say we need an edge guy or a defensive lineman, everyone's like, man, you're just a defensive lineman. You always want to see them get a D lineman. No, I don't always want to see them go D line. And I didn't say they had to go first pick D line because we got a tackle last year with our number one pick in Kalijah Cansey. But the defensive line needs to be addressed. The linebacker position needs to be addressed. But secondary, depending on where we fall draft wise and who's on the board, I would go corner, depending on who's available. And I hadn't really started breaking down my mock draft stuff yet. But once I start looking into it, it'll give me a better idea of what I think the Buccaneers should do.
Yeah, the draft itself, we all can definitely acknowledge. This is a quarterback, left tackle. I would also say maybe mix in some edge rushers here and there, and then it's a whole overhaul of wide receivers in this draft. So it's like, there's so much to think about, with the offseason. But I do believe that with a season like that, Tampa kind of feels like they understand what their identity is. I think they definitely found that late in that season as well, once they started cooking. And now they're going to try to work to keep the consistency. So it'll be exciting to kind of see them in that regard. But I do have to ask this, for all of my viewers and listeners here. As for somebody who's experienced this organization, you basically had an overhaul of names that were great on the defensive side of things. You know what this organization is about. Take me back to your career and being in that front row seat. What was that experience like for you? Because honestly, when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won in 2020 with Tom Brady and that big defense, you've been a part of a big-time class of defensive guys. How did you kind of experience this organization, and what was kind of their what's like their narrative for my audience here to kind of get a good feel of like, what does it mean to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, and what are the expectations it is when you're out on and off the field?
Man, I tell everyone, it was crazy getting drafted in '98 by the Buccaneers because Warren Sapp, John Lynch, Derek Brooks, Hardy Nickerson, Chidi Yohana, Rondé Barber. It's just crazy. These are guys that are on my defense, and then later on, Simeon Rice comes in as a free agent from Arizona. And it's just like, dude, what the hell is going on? But, being in that meeting room, listening, taking everything in, seeing the effort and what was required of you at practice, I think that's what blew my mind, because I talked to other guys that I played ball with in college, other friends that, some got drafted, and the standard was set from day one. And I tell people on that coaching staff I had, Coach Dungy was the head coach, Monty Kiffin, the defensive coordinator, Lovie Smith, linebacker coach, Herm Edwards, the secondary coach. All these guys went on to coach NFL, some are Hall of Fame coaches. Herm leaves, Mike Tomlin comes in. So I'm like, these are the guys that you're around. The requirements and the standard. The bar was set so high to where you knew how you had to perform in practice, just to, hopefully get dressed. And that's the craziest thing. When I first got to the NFL, I didn't realize, I knew 53-man roster. Yeah, cool. I just want to make the 53. Yeah. Then it's like, hey, you got to make the 47 active man roster to draft. Huh? There's an active and inactive roster? You mean I could not dress? Yeah. Everybody don't dress out. I was like, huh? So, I work hard preseason, did a great job, made the team. Like, cool, first game of the season, we go to Minnesota. We play against the damn Vikings, and that's when, it was the NFC Central, and Randy Moss showed his ass as a rookie. You're like, God damn, look at Randy Moss. And it was a great game, great time played. And then I was inactive for 5 straight weeks. I was like, well, what the hell is this? Are you doing a great job in practice? We just want to do this. So me going in, I'm like, hey, I asked Brad Culpepper, hey, man, what do I need to do to try to make sure I can make this active roster all the time? He's like, what we tell you, the standard is in practice. You have to be above that because of where you are and who you want to try to get in and share time with. So it was just like a grind. So running to the ball, there was never any walking. If you didn't get to the ball, like when we watched film, all 11 people on defense had to be in the frame of the film. If you weren't in the frame, you run the next day. And this is at a professional level. Like college, they run the hell out you all the time. It's no big deal. Like, God, no, they running the dog piss out of me. I'm
Oh,
gonna
no
pass out and
question.
I'm gonna pass on a dot. But the standard was you run everywhere you go. You hustle. There's 11 hats to the ball. No excuses. Know your assignment. I mean, the bar was set so high. And once you knew what the standard was, and the way they did it in Tampa, pretty much, man, you were either going to follow along, be able to uphold that standard, or they were going to get rid of you and bring somebody else in. And the vet said that to me early on. I was like, look, man, Derek Brooks said, James, let me talk to you. He said, you coming up here tomorrow to work out on Tuesday on our off day? I said, yeah, I'm thinking about coming and getting some legs. He said, hey, well, let me know what time. I'm coming up here this time if you can come up. So I came up there. We work out. Derek said, come here. We walked to the window. He said, look at that. Our D-line coach and the scouting staff is out on the field working people out. I was like, what the hell are they doing? He said, somebody's always working to come get your job. I didn't realize every Tuesday is an off day with players, but personnel people are working other guys out all the time, just in case someone gets hurt later or if someone's not panning out and playing right, so they can sign somebody and bring them in and let you go. So at that point in time, I realized that if I wanted to make it and be a part of this team, I had to live up to the standard that the defense is set. And that's really what it was. Tony Dungy was a defensive-minded guy. Monty Kiffin, defensive-minded guy. The defense carried that team for years. I mean, it was always like, well, we can just get the right pieces on offense. And you're like, you know what? That's their job. We're going to make sure we do our part. And that's just, that's what it was on defense the whole time. And that's what it was like during that time. So when you saw these defenses perform, like the Super Bowl performance with Brady and how they played against the Chiefs, and we knew that the Chiefs had some injuries, but even though it wasn't the exact same defense, it's what Tampa had become known for a long time. And so just to see it was great. And even then, different times this year, it's like, oh, they're carried by their defense and they do this. And it's like, yeah, they have a reputation. And then you see the Houston Texans game where C.J. Stroud carves us up for 450 passing yards and 5 touchdowns. You're like, that's not the defensive standard. And so even coaches that come in with that mindset have still tried to keep carrying on the same thing because it's just kind of been ingrained and attached to the franchise that if you play against a Tampa Bay Buccaneer team, it's going to be a disciplined defensive team that's going to make it tough on you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And gosh, I mean, that is a hell of an experience. And especially, I mean, look, I watched Tony Dungy's teams. I mean, they were very unique. I mean, even from the time in Tampa to the time in Indianapolis, right. I mean, these were such unique teams. But you know what? That has got to be, I know for you in your personal career, but that's got to be something to basically be working out with these guys, Derek, Rondé Park, you know what I mean? And that's got to be something there.
So, Jake, I have 2 boys now. My oldest has graduated and he's going to college. He's not playing ball anymore. My youngest is in high school. He's still playing ball. So every now and then, when I played, my youngest was born when I was playing in Indianapolis. So he knows nothing about Tampa. They knew nothing about me playing in Tampa at the time. But they love asking stories now and talking to me. And they're like, so what was it like the first time? This. Yeah, and I was, I always tell them, but so we're watching the San Francisco 49ers and Detroit Lions game. I was like, oh, Barry Sanders, da-da-da. And so I just started telling a Barry Sanders story because Barry Sanders last year in the league was my rookie year in the NFL. And I was like, man, guys, can I tell y'all something? I said, I've only been starstruck probably 3 times in my life that I can remember, that where I was just like totally like lost the words, can't talk. And here it is, we're in Tampa. They warming up. Barry, I was like, no, actually, man, I'll take it back. We were in Pontiac. We had to go to Michigan. We had to go to Detroit, and that's when they played in old Pontiac. Yep. And you see them come run out, right? The running backs run out. Everybody come up out of positions. I'm on the sideline, and I was like, that's Barry Sanders. I can't. I want to talk. I want to meet him. I'm like, you got to play football against a guy. You talk about wanting to just meet him. Reggie White did. So I'm like, my son's like, Dad, are you serious? I was like, man, I said, jaw dropping. I said, to watch the moves and things he did and running the way he did. I was like, man, y'all don't even know. I said, a man that just quit way too early in his prime still has so much left to watch what he could do with a football in his hand. And the same thing with the people on my team. So like, I'll have conversations with people And I was like, yeah. Oh, I was like, who? Oh, 099? That's what, I call once. I said, ain't no big deal, whatever. My buddy's like, man, that is a big deal, fool. We never met anybody in the Hall of Fame. And I was like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. It was like, I just saw these guys a couple of years ago, talked to them, got the number, hit them with a text, call, whatever. And it just, you don't really think about it sometimes. And then when you're in the moment, and then you sit back sometimes and think like, wow, at the end of the day, if I sit back here and tell these football stories to my kids, to the kids I coach, to the people I work with, they're a lot of times in awe and amazement because of the level that these guys were able to play and what they accomplished and achieved. And, to me, these were, guys that love the game of football and went to work and bust their butt, the same way that I did every day. So it's just, I mean, not to take it for granted, but it's easy to just kind of forget just in regular talking sometime and stop to realize like, you're a small percent of people that was able to say you did this and then who you did it with at the time
Yes.
makes it like, wow. And so that's why I'm like, I feel blessed every day, man. Every day, any time I can give a comparison or a story to relate it to something that I did when I was in the NFL, it's a true blessing because not everyone has a chance to do that. And not everyone has, that kind of story or thing to compare life to. So it's a good time.
No, 100%. And you know what? Like, I mean, honestly, like this is what I've built this show for 4 years running now. And like, because I live for stories like this. I mean, another NFL, alumni that I basically I've interviewed. I mean, I've interviewed Jalen Mills, I've interviewed Maurice Jones-Drew, and I've even had personal talks with one of my favorites. As for me personally, I'm a diehard Charger fan, and
Okay.
and listening and introducing myself to Sean Merriman was just,
Oh,
I mean,
man.
and he still is built like he could still play. Like
Yeah.
it's incredible, but it's just like it's stories and moments like this that we never got a chance to like really kind of dive in and be in the driver's seat of like what that was like. What were some of the adversities that these players have overcame, and then what they're doing now? I mean, what you're doing now, like on the show, is incredible. And I always hope for the absolute best for you, man. I mean, continuous great content, man. I mean, Tampa Bay fans got to be loving it. I got to say this. I mean, as a quick, fun question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it kind of true? Because look, I've heard narratives about, Tampa Bay, it's cocktails in the morning type of. I mean, in your experience being there, like what was like the city of Tampa Bay like for you?
I love Tampa, man. And it's so crazy because after playing, my wife and I went into a debate of where we were going to move to. I was like, let's go back. We wanted to go back out west for a while because we're both from California. And then I was like, wait, let's go back to Nevada. And we were going to move to Las Vegas. Then my wife, because a bunch of my buddies, I went to school in Reno. That's where I went to college, University of Nevada. And so a bunch of my buddies had all moved down to Vegas. And I was like, hey, we're going to move out to Vegas. And my wife's like, oh, hell no, we're not doing Vegas. It's going to be like college all over again. So I was like, all right, cool. We want to do Vegas. Not going to do California, long story short. So we ended up in Texas. But always talked about going back to Tampa and going back to Florida. Tampa is a great small city. It's not Miami, but you can have those Miami type vibes sometimes. But at the same time, you can wind it way down. Now, depending on where you are, you cross the right causeway, what side of the bay you're on, you might be in a straight like retirement community, old people. Another area with snowbirds from New York. They've just come down for the wintertime. Then the young people. Tampa's got a great melting pot, great city. It's a great spot to do things. Orlando's so close, so if you want to take the kids to Magic Kingdom, Disney, the whole nine, you can do that. So it was that vibe, like, and I don't know what it was like in every NFL city because I didn't play in every NFL city. But Tampa, small metropolitan area compared to say New York, Chicago, now that LA has football again, right? Those are ginormous markets. It's just crazy. Something always going on. Even Dallas, where I live now, Tampa. It's like the first time I went somewhere, and somebody said, "Hey, James, how's it going?" I was like, "Huh?" I'm like, how the fool know me? Like, "Hey, James." I'm like, "Oh yeah, man, you got drafted." People laughed though, and players on the team laughed. Like, I love Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans, but we used to say that our fans are still fans in training because we had so many people from so many different parts of the country
Yeah.
that would come down to Florida to get away from their weather. That it was always hard to find the true Buccaneer fans. But I do content with some of these, some guys that on a show on a platform called Bucs Report,
Mhm.
and it's a great job. They do a great job. It's a great fan base, and it's great, loyal, diehard fans that love what's going on. And I love that Tom Brady came in when he did, kind of help revitalize, get us back going on the right track. Because when I went down to Tampa for the Malcolm Glazer Ring of Honor ceremony,
Mhm.
and we played against the New York Giants on the Monday night, there were more Giants fans in the stadium than Tampa fans at that year. And I was looking at the and I was like, this is not acceptable. Like, this was never like this in my 4 years of playing here before I left. It's like, when the hell did we become the place where all the people from those other cities are retired and living here, and we have more of them in the stands than we have our own fans? That's the thing that kind of surprised me and shocked me. But I love the fans. Every time we got on the bus to go to the airport, the send off, and even a small loyal group of the welcome back. And it was amazing, man. It was almost like I felt like a rock star. And I was like, I was nowhere near that. I was nowhere near the Derek Brooks, Deronde Barbers, of the Warren Sapps. But that community treated everybody that was a part of that team like they were the biggest name in football at the time if you were part of that team. And it was great. It was a great playing there. I loved it.
It's funny because growing up as a kid, I watched that 2002 Super Bowl run with Tampa Bay. And when
Mhm.
they had Brad Johnson, it was just a guy who was he did his job. He was
Right.
accurate, and to watch that team. And then over time, to me, my NFL, I have a sports almanac. I go way back when, from the Sean King years, the
Wow. Yeah.
Bruce Gradkowski's of the world, and even good Lord, like even Jeff Garcia. But it's just
Right.
until finally, you get a quarterback who has been there. He's done that for 20 years in New England,
Right.
sets the tone. And I've heard from a lot of people, he's pretty hard. And, he's the kind that he's going to let you know if you make a mistake, he'll let you
Yeah.
know about it. But I think that's good. It is good for, a town like Tampa Bay, and especially in an organization like the Buccaneers, who's produced some great talents over the years, And so, for me, I've always been curious. I'm a traveler, between me
Okay.
and my wife, I'm a very big time traveler. And
Okay.
I've been to Jacksonville once. I was
Right.
on a cruise to the Bahamas, right? And we left port out of Jacksonville. But
Okay.
I got to tell you, when I stayed the night there, my skin was sticky. It was 90.
Oh, that's the humidity, bro.
I was like, and then I walk over and I'm like at a grocery store and somebody's asking me about if I got tree. I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, is this how they roll here?
Hey, Duval's a little bit different, but
It is.
Tampa, that if you're from Vegas, so you're from, so you used to that dry heat.
Yes.
It's way different.
High desert
Like,
high heat is
like every time I go out to Vegas in the summer, I'm like, oh my God, feels like there's a hair dryer on you. But even here, I live in Texas now, but even in Florida, it's even worse. That you feel like you go outside and stand in for a few minutes, you feel like you just been in a swamp. You're soaking wet.
yeah.
And then the thing, Jake, that got me about Tampa that I did not know, the lightning capital of the United States. And in the summertime, almost the same time every day in that afternoon, about 3 to about 4:30ish, 5ish, you're gonna get some rain. The rain's gonna come down. It may be 10 minutes, it might be an hour, it might be a drizzle, it might come down hard, but you best believe the rain is coming. And I was like, Jesus, what is going on? Like lightning. And all of a sudden, rain. You're like, dang. And I heard it go inside the house. And all of a sudden you look back, the sun's out, and then the humidity is like 100 times worse. You you go outside and cut it with a knife. It's so thick. You're like, God, this is ridiculous.
Seriously, it's like you walk out of a sauna bed and it's just like, what the hell is this? Like, you're not lying with that tropical storms that go on there in the Florida, the Florida area, but It's definitely a hell of a ride. But
Yeah.
real quick before letting you go, I mean,
Mhm.
as somebody as a Nevada Wolfpack alumni, and
Mhm.
for me, I mean, I've lived in Vegas my whole life since '95. I'm 28 years old now. Live in Denver. So the Super Bowl is now officially in Las Vegas, and
Wow.
I said this. I mean, growing up as a kid, Vegas was not like this. This was in a part where we were in development to getting to that point of where
Right.
it is right now. And so I've said this to people. They've had Formula One, a couple months ago, and now
Uh-huh.
you've got the Super Bowl here,
Right.
which, to be honest, I've said this before. I don't even really think fans are prepared for this. This is a party that is well worth the memory, and it's well worth the experience. But I mean, you're getting California, like just really driving in, and now Santa Clara County is all coming down there.
Man.
It's just, I mean, when you look at this Super Bowl, and I know that this is a repeat of 2019 with Kansas City and San Francisco, but the experience of it, I mean, this has got to be one for the history books. And from somebody that's been there my whole life, you've never had this. I mean, we come from back-to-back champion Las Vegas Aces, a
Right.
first-time Stanley Cup champion Golden
Nice.
Knights,
Right.
and now here we are in the biggest stage of them all. I mean, how insanity is this to go from what it was then to where here we are right now in the biggest stage? I mean, fans got to be excited about this, right?
They do, but it's so funny, like you said, you made a great point because we were talking about it the other day. So many people don't even realize, like they know nothing about old Vegas, about going somewhere to get a 99-cent breakfast where everything was cheap
Yes.
and all the prices weren't like, high as giraffe butt, right? Like no one really knows that anymore unless you were from the West Coast. Like people used to always make that track from LA, like you said, on the weekends to come to Vegas because you go stay, didn't cost you a lot, have a good time, gamble some money, and drive back home, right?
Mhm.
I want to be a fly in Las Vegas on the Super Bowl. I don't want to be there because I'm not crazy about crowds like that. And I know this is going to be a whole nother level of jam packed. I mean, last time I went to Vegas, you couldn't get up and down the strip. I don't even want to see what it's going to be like doing Super Bowl. It's
Oh,
going to be unimaginable. But at the same time, it's going to be one I think will always be remembered because every city, there's always something that goes on. The NFL usually does a really good job with the NFL experience and other things to try to get fans involved and to be able to interact with what's going on. Um, Droves of people are going to be there, whether 49er fans, Chiefs fans or not. I believe just football fans in general
oh,
are going to
100%.
overtake it. And Allegiant State, that stadium, man, is just
Oh,
beyond
it is
amazing. And
incredible.
and to be where it is off of the strip, it's gonna be nuts. Long time overdue, and a long time ago, you always heard older people and business people, casino owners petitioning, wanting a professional team, but it's gonna be tainted because of gambling. We don't think the leagues don't want to do it. Now they're trying to bring baseball and basketball to Vegas as well to go along with the hockey and the NFL. And I
Yeah.
think it's much needed and much deserved. And it's great for the people of Las Vegas and Nevada. But the NFL does a really good job. It's going to be crazy. It
Oh,
is going to be crazy, and it's going to be one I think people will, like you said, remember for a long time. And I just like I said, I want to be a fly on the wall,
yeah.
on a wall somewhere, just to be able to witness it and then just fly away and be able to sit down and watch the game in peace when it's time for kickoff.
I mean, not for nothing, but I'll tell you this, and like I basically have said this before. I've got good friends of mine that are diehard Kansas City fans, and look, I mean, you're in Allegiant Stadium, you're on enemy territory, right? You got all those Raider fans up over there, and they don't like to play nice. And look, I mean, your teammate Warren Sapp, he's got to know what that's like, being up there part
Right,
of the Raiders organization. So,
right.
but I do think, in all of fairness, you're absolutely right. I think this is something that football fans have long awaited to do. And even in Las Vegas, and I've told people this multiple times because some of them were kind of like, oh, this town has never been a baseball town. I'm like, are you kidding me? We have minor league baseball that people from Cardinals, Yankees,
Yeah,
Dodgers, I mean, all fans from all over the whole nation is just like they're all here. So to have now the A's and at some point now to have an NBA team because we got the summer leagues. I mean,
Right.
this has been quite a changing narrative from
Right.
the last few years because we've always been so used to, New York's and Boston's and, and Dallas's of the world. Now Los Angeles and Las Vegas have basically made their come ups in the West Coast where like, hey, we're here, we're leaving our imprints and we're going to make
Right.
it happen. And shout out to a really good friend of mine, also NFL alumni, Marlon Greenwood. He's down there with his his great foundation there. He's going to have a great time and to see a lot of great NFL players there, experiencing this, it's going to be a hell of a time. I'm really excited about it.
It's going to be fun. And it was a real toss up for me. I was like, should we go? And I thought about it, but I'm going to that crazy place you just mentioned, Jacksonville, to spend Super Bowl weekend with some family. We're having a big family get together in Florida. So I'm gonna go hang out there and watch it from afar. But I've talked to different guys that are going and doing the NFL alumni thing and putting on different events. And that's one of the good things that was always so cool, even when you get a chance to go to those other cities and do it. You get to link up with other guys, former players, present players, but still have a chance to be able to give back to the community. And that's always a good thing to be able to go into those towns and try to make a difference to help those communities out during that week. Because a lot of attention will be brought to that city during that time that, they don't get they get it from that organization, but now you get other organizations in there as well to do that. And it's always a big thing. And that's one thing that I love doing once I got to the NFL is getting with different charities and finding ways to give back. And like I said, they do that again with the NFL Legends community and NFL PA players and former players. They do a really good job of, Habitat for Humanity, building homes, all kind of stuff that usually goes on that a lot of people don't see. They just see the parties, but that goes on as well during those Super Bowl weeks.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, for people that are basically watching, I got this up on clip now, and look, this is the real authentic thing, and it's not even just what you leave off of on the field, but it's what you do off the field, from communities to charities and to so much of it. Like, and the story like yours, it's absolutely incredible. This has been a home run on this show that basically having this, and I hope, for the year of 2024, I have more of this. This is obviously what I've always dreamed of. Like I said, I look at Colin Cowherd, and he's the reason I made this podcast, and he's the reason that I want to get up there and I want to be in that seat, talking with everybody and expressing what true, authentic sports is really all about. So I will say thank you for the time that you've given, and to sharing your journey and your thoughts upon it, man. Wishing you the absolute best of luck in the show that you do. Where can all diehard Tampa Bay fans and fans around football fans can find your show at?
Okay, first, I appreciate you having me on and keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job, man. You can find me. It's at BGSE Network. A buddy of mine, he's like, James, you're doing this podcast. And I was doing a real small level podcast that I was just putting out on audio once a month. And he's like, man, we need to start taking this weekly. And then once we started doing it, start growing, he was like, hey, we got other people that want to do shows with you. Let's start a network. So we started a whole network. So it's BGSE Network. You can catch me, myself, my personal show is on Thursday nights, 8:30 p.m. Central Time, and that's Big Game Sports Buzz. I do Games Pewter Perspective, where usually it would be a pregame preview show on a Friday and then a game recap on Mondays. So now that's just kind of will be randomly me working out, covering Tampa Bay, free agency moves, things like that, shorts all the time. But that's a BGSE Network on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Instagram. And my personal one, if anybody wants to hit me up on that, I like to holler at people. I'm an approachable, reasonable guy. It's at James Cannida. And that's about it, man. Like I said, I put a show out on Thursdays. Usually come out with another one, a short on the weekends. And anybody that, if you like just man talk, we got Man Cave Mondays. And we also have a Philadelphia Eagles show that I let those guys do their thing on my network because they do a damn good job of talking about craft beer and the Eagles. And that's on Thursday nights as well. And that's 10 Eastern time. That's called Two Birds in One Show.
Oh, well, there you go, folks. That's where you could definitely check out all of the shows and check out BGSC Network as well. They're on the come-ups as well, just like we are here at Sports Wave Network. Appreciate the time with you, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Enjoy yourself up out there in Jacksonville during Super Bowl weekend. And hey, if you're ever around the Denver area, man, I definitely would love to get a chance to chat with you more, man. But good seeing you. Have a great weekend, and we will definitely talk with you soon.
Thanks, Jay. Have a good night, man.
Thanks. You too.